Dear my beloved souls, have you ever looked back at a relationship, a conversation, or a connection and thought, why do I feel so drained? Have you ever wondered why certain people leave you feeling smaller, quieter, less focused, no matter how much love, kindness, or help you offer them? What if I told you that not every outstretched hand is meant to be held? What if your divine light is being silently stolen by people who were never sent to receive it, only to absorb and extinguish it? Chosen one, you carry something sacred. You are not just another face in the crowd. You have been marked by heaven, assigned to walk with purpose and crowned with spiritual authority. That's why some people come close, not to bless you, but to bleed you. They smile, they flatter, they lean in as if they're drawn to your goodness. And in a way, they are, but not for the right reasons. Some souls are not hungry for healing. They are addicted to draining divine vessels like you. That's why you must be wise with your oil. You cannot afford to hand it out to every person who demands your attention. Today's message will open your eyes. You're about to discover something that may change the way you protect your spirit for the rest of your life. There are people God has been warning you about, people that seem harmless, even desperate. But every time you pour into them, your clarity dims, your energy crashes, your prayers become weaker, and then confusion takes over. That is not your portion. That is not the life God intended for His chosen ones. But if you don't see them clearly, you'll keep pouring until you have nothing left. So pause right now and ask yourself, who in your life always seems to need help, but never seems to grow from it? Who pulls you in with urgency, but offers nothing but chaos in return? And deeper still, have you ever mistaken a spiritual leech for a divine assignment? Before we dive into the revelation, I want to say thank you to each of you who continues to support this journey through Super Thanks. Your generosity, your comments, your prayers, whether you give financially or simply lend your presence here, are felt deeply, and I honor you. Whether you sow into this message or not, you are appreciated, you are seen, and you are a vital part of this circle of light. Thank you from the depths of my soul for being here. Now, if your spirit feels this message already stirring, I want you to type 999 in the comments. That number represents divine completion. And today, something that has lingered too long in your life, something draining you without your permission, is coming to an end. Your eyes are about to open. Your soul is about to reclaim its peace. You are about to remember why God set you apart in the first place. Let's begin. God's chosen ones, these 4 signs, confirm that your destiny is to lead in the final days. Chosen one, let's get brutally honest, because sugarcoating your life story does it no justice. The truth is, if people knew even a fraction of what you've survived, they wouldn't just be shocked, they'd be speechless. You've walked through spiritual fire so hot they should have burned away your identity, but instead they forged your purpose. You've tried to explain the things you've endured, the pain that never made sense, the betrayals that came without warning, the nights that seemed endless. But every time you opened your mouth, the world gave you blank stares or polite nods. Worse, some dismissed your struggles entirely, as if you were being dramatic or overly sensitive. But deep down, you knew better. You didn't imagine those wounds. You lived them. You carried them like invisible scars etched onto your soul, and though no one else could see them, they marked you. They marked you for destiny. Let me ask you something, and answer this in the quiet of your heart. Why do you think your battles started so early? Why were you fighting spiritual giants before you even knew how to pray? Why did the attacks come before you understood the war? Have you ever wondered why you were thrown into survival mode when others were still playing games, enjoying innocence, untouched by chaos? It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. While others were cradled, you were carved. While they were cushioned, you were being commissioned. And not just for any task, for leadership, for legacy, for final day authority. This isn't about simply surviving anymore. This is about rising up, because you were always meant to lead when others collapse. You may not have realized it yet, but what felt like abandonment was actually divine attention. God's hand was on you, not to crush you, but to cultivate you. The fire wasn't to destroy, it was to refine. Isaiah 48:10 says, "See, I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." That furnace is where you've been, fighting unseen wars, crying into silent pillows, walking into rooms pretending to be fine while your soul was aching. But here's the paradox. The more pain you carried, the more potential heaven saw in you. The deeper your suffering, the higher your anointing, because in the final days, God doesn't need soft voices. He needs prophetic thunder. He doesn't need popularity. He needs purity. And guess what? That's you. Look at someone like Nelson Mandela. Decades of imprisonment didn't destroy him. They defined him. The world tried to erase his voice behind prison walls, but his silence became his strategy. By the time he was released, he didn't just speak change, he embodied it. And that's what's happening with you. The silence that surrounded your pain wasn't empty. It was echoing. It was building the gravity of your voice so that when you finally speak, things shift. Atmospheres respond. The spiritual realm takes notice. Do you remember how many nights you felt completely abandoned? How often you whispered prayers into what felt like a void? And yet, here you are, still breathing, still waking up, still pressing forward. There's a reason for that. Your survival isn't ordinary, it's supernatural. Romans 5:3-4 reminds us, "We also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." You've developed a rare strength, not just the kind that can carry weight, but the kind that can carry others, and that's the mark of a leader. Let me take you to another real-life story, Oprah Winfrey. From childhood trauma and poverty to rejection in the early stages of her career, she had every reason to stay down, but she didn't. She transformed her pain into purpose, her rejection into redirection, and her platform into a place of healing for millions. That's not coincidence, that's calling, and the same DNA of destiny runs through you. You're not a random soul stumbling through pain. You are divinely engineered for purpose. Let's return to those early storms. Think about it. Why did the enemy come for you before you even understood spiritual warfare? Why were you attacked at your most innocent, most unprepared stage? Because darkness saw something in you long before you saw it in yourself. The enemy does not waste resources. He doesn't attack the average. He targets the anointed. If hell launched its weapons early, it's because it feared who you'd become. And guess what? That fear was justified, because now you're rising, and your rising cannot be stopped. You see, leadership in the final days isn't about charisma, it's about character. It's not about appearance, it's about anointing, and anointing is forged in fire. Your story has been a slow burn, a sacred process, where God kept trimming, purging, sharpening, because he knew that when the world begins to unravel, he'd need someone like you to stand, not shake, to command calm in chaos, to speak truth when lies reign. And the only way to make sure you wouldn't fold was to break everything false out of you first. Consider the story of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He endured the unthinkable in Nazi concentration camps, yet emerged with a mindset that revolutionized psychology. His theory: that man can survive any how if he has a why. That's exactly what God has been writing into your soul, a why so fierce that no how can destroy it. You've been given spiritual clarity in a world addicted to confusion. And isn't that what leaders in the final days need? Clarity, conviction, courage, but more than that, resilience. Because leading now means bearing the weight of vision while surrounded by people still blinded by illusion. Can you feel it? Can you sense how every disappointment, every betrayal, every loss was actually weaving together a tapestry of divine resilience? You were never meant to blend in. That's why conformity never fit you. That's why certain jobs, friendships, even families felt more like cages than homes. You were wired for more. 2 Timothy 2:3 reminds us, endure hardship as a good soldier of Christ Jesus. Not a bystander, not a background character, a soldier, a leader, a warrior in God's end-time army. And that's why you're still standing when others have fallen. You weren't just preserved, you were positioned. Let's not forget Malala Yousafzai. Shot for simply going to school, she could have remained a victim. But instead, she became a global voice for girls' education and peace. Her scars didn't stop her, they propelled her. Just like yours will. Because scars don't signify weakness, they signify survival. And survival is the badge of those God uses to guide others out of darkness. Are you starting to see it yet? The divine setup. All along your life was speaking. Every closed door, every silent season, every unexplained detour. It was God rewriting your story in real time, so that when people ask, "How are you still standing?" you'll say, "Because grace carried me when strength couldn't." Psalm 34, verse 19 promises, "The righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all." And he has. You're not just alive, you're awakened. And now, chosen one, you're beginning to remember. You're not just someone who survived the fire, you were the fire. The flames that were meant to consume you became the furnace that birthed you. And there's a responsibility that comes with that, because others are watching. They need your story, they need your voice, they need your scars, not hidden, but holy. Let me leave you with one next name, Bethany Hamilton, a surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack at 13. She could have quit, but instead she returned to the waves and became a champion. Her story isn't about a comeback, it's about divine design, about refusing to be defined by what was taken and instead rising into what was promised. That's you. You're rising, you're remembering, you're reclaiming. So, what if every single pain you've endured was not just a test, but a prophecy in disguise? What if your survival was heaven's loudest confirmation that you're the one God chose to lead in the final days? This is just the beginning. Stay with me. What comes next will not only confirm everything you've started to suspect, it will explain why people are disappearing from your life, why your environment is shifting, and why the silence has returned. Don't move. The next sign is already on its way. Chosen one, there's something about the way you move through this world that stops time for those who are spiritually aware. Even if you don't see it, your very presence carries a frequency that shifts the atmosphere. You don't operate like most people, not because you're trying to be different, but because deep within your bones, your spirit is carrying a weight that was never optional. It's a sacred heaviness, a divine gravity, an ancient assignment that was stitched into your soul long before you ever took your first breath. Others might wake up wondering what they want to do with their day. You wake up carrying the burden of people's unspoken pain, sensing shifts in the spiritual realm, feeling things others can't name. Why do you think that is? Why do you feel responsible for things that others walk past without a second thought? Why are you the one who picks up broken pieces no one else claims? Why do you feel an urgency to pray for people who would never pray for you? To hold space for those who take you for granted? To carry weight that was never yours to bear? It's because you're not just sensitive. You're assigned. You're not just empathetic. You're anointed. What they see as a weakness is actually the mark of divine authority being born through pain, through quiet obedience, through invisible battles. The world doesn't notice, but heaven watches every moment. This is why, even when your own heart is breaking, you show up, you lead, you listen, you intercede, you fix what isn't yours to fix, you notice details others miss. And when the world is chaotic, your instinct is to be still, to anchor, to stabilize what's spinning. But why? Why is your spirit wired like this? Because leadership wasn't something you chose, it was encoded into you. You were designed not to chase applause but to carry presence. You were formed not to entertain the masses but to uphold the mission. Isaiah 61:1 reminds us, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to bind up the broken-hearted." Sound familiar? That's what you've been doing, even if you didn't have the language for it. When others chase pleasure, you chase purpose. When others avoid confrontation, you run toward responsibility. When the easy path beckons, something in you resists, not because you enjoy the pressure, but because your soul knows something their minds cannot grasp. The divine doesn't allow you to rest too long in comfort. The Spirit won't let you settle into mediocrity. And every time you try to retreat, to hide, to live normally, something divine calls you back. You feel the spiritual urgency. The code in your soul lights up again. And you remember, normal isn't your destiny. Safety isn't your assignment. You were born to go first, and going first is heavy. Pioneers are rarely praised. Pathmakers often bleed so that others can walk safely. But the weight you carry in silence, the battles you fight in secret, the responsibilities you shoulder without reward, none of them are wasted. They are proof that God doesn't call the obvious. He calls the obedient. Consider the story of Harriet Tubman. She wasn't wealthy, powerful, or loud by society's standards, but her spiritual hearing was sharp. She followed God's voice through the Underground Railroad, saving hundreds while risking her own life. She moved when others froze. She carried freedom in silence while others begged for comfort. That's the kind of leader heaven trusts. That's the kind of leadership you've been shaped for. No one claps for the foundation. No one praises the concrete beneath the surface, but the whole structure stands because of it. That's what you are. The invisible strength, the hidden pillar. And just like David tended sheep long before he ever faced Goliath, God is watching how you handle your wilderness. Psalm 78:72 says, "And David shepherded them with integrity of heart. With skillful hands he led them." Notice it wasn't his crown that made him a leader, it was his character. Your character is being built in obscurity, not so you can stay hidden forever, but so when the time comes, your fruit will speak louder than any introduction ever could. What happens when the ones you serve don't thank you? When the people you pray for never ask how you're doing? When your strength is taken for granted and your presence is expected but never honored? That's when true leadership is tested. Not in applause, but in abandonment. Not in recognition, but in rejection. And if this sounds like your story, it's because God has been refining you in the shadows. Hidden now, yes, but not for long. Think of Fred Rogers, better known as Mr. Rogers. His quiet leadership impacted generations. He didn't shout his beliefs, he lived them. He carried peace into every room. He reminded people of their worth without needing to raise his voice. And yet, few knew the spiritual battles he fought in private. He was a quiet warrior, just like you. Someone chosen to reflect heaven in a world too loud to hear it. You may still think all this weight, all this responsibility is random, that maybe your heart is just too soft, that you were born sensitive. But what if I told you that softness is your strength, that spiritual sensitivity is divine radar, that what people label as overthinking is actually overseeing, that what they dismiss as feeling too deeply is really your prophetic wiring detecting what others miss? Romans 12:6-8 tells us we all have different gifts, and those who lead must lead diligently. Your diligence hasn't gone unnoticed by heaven. God saw you forgive when it wasn't fair. He saw you hold others when no one held you. He saw your consistency when it wasn't convenient. And now He's preparing to reveal you. Yes, you, quiet leader, silent intercessor, unseen protector. He's been testing how you lead when no one's looking. Because if you can serve in silence, you can be trusted with the spotlight. If you can obey when it makes no earthly sense, you can handle supernatural direction. And when the veil lifts, and it will, the world will be stunned. They'll ask, "Where did you come from?" And heaven will say, "From the furnace, from the wilderness, from my secret place." Think of Mother Teresa. She spent years in silent struggle, feeling spiritually dry while serving the most broken people on earth. Her journal entries later revealed seasons of intense spiritual loneliness. And yet, she never stopped showing up. Her reward wasn't on earth, it was eternal. Her impact wasn't loud, it was legendary. That's the kind of quiet leadership God births in hidden places. That's the kind of legacy you're building even when no one claps. So, do you still believe your weight is random? Do you still think you're too emotional or too caring? Or are you starting to see it for what it is, evidence of your divine assignment? What if the pain you've carried, the compassion you feel, the responsibility you can't escape are all signs you were born to be a spiritual first responder, a guardian of atmospheres, a gatekeeper of righteousness? 1 Corinthians 4:1-2 says, "This then is how you ought to regard us, as servants of Christ. Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful." You've been entrusted. And the silence hasn't been God ignoring you. It's been your proving ground. The obedience you've shown in the absence of affirmation is storing up a reward that will shock even you. And just as Jesus spent 30 years in obscurity before 3 years of public ministry, your time in the quiet has been holy training. The veil is lifting soon. Heaven's hidden ones are being revealed. And when it happens, people won't understand the oil on your life because they never saw the crushing that created it. Take a look at the life of Malcolm X. Before he became a voice for justice, he was dismissed, imprisoned, overlooked. But in the shadows, God was breaking, shaping, and remaking him. When his time came, he spoke with such fire that even his enemies had to pay attention. He didn't lead because he was polished. He led because he was purposed. And that's exactly how your leadership will unfold. Not through perfection, but through preparation. Chosen one, you weren't made for the sidelines. You weren't created to play small, to dim your light for the comfort of others. You were born to go first, to stand up when others sit down, to be the first to forgive, the first to fight, the first to love in a loveless world. You are the mirror of heaven in a culture of confusion. And that's why the weight is so heavy, because the mantle is real. And when the time comes to step fully into your calling, nothing and no one will be able to stop the release of what God has stored in you. So stay in position. Don't grow weary. Don't underestimate your tears. Don't silence your gift, because what you carry is not of this world. You carry presence. You carry prophecy. You carry kingdom. And when God finally says, "Now," the world will meet the leader he's been cultivating all along, in you. Now don't go anywhere. The next sign will explain why people constantly misread you, even the ones who claim to love you most. It's not rejection, it's revelation. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Chosen one, let's speak truthfully about something you've likely carried for years but barely said aloud. Not because it's unimportant, but because it cuts too deep to voice. It's not just betrayal, not just abandonment. It's the hollow ache of being misunderstood, especially by the ones who were supposed to know your heart. It's the confusion that comes when those you love the most can't or won't see you clearly. It's the sting of realizing that no matter how much you explain, how softly you speak, how much you shrink your soul to fit their expectations, they still don't hear you. You speak from your spirit, but they respond from their flesh. You move according to divine whispers, but they mislabel it as rebellion, eccentricity, or even arrogance. But tell me this, why do you still crave their understanding when it's your calling that sets you apart? Why do you still hope they'll one day get it when every step forward reveals a deeper gap in perception? The truth is hard, but it's freeing. Being misunderstood is not a curse, it's a sign, a divine marker that what's inside of you cannot be explained using worldly vocabulary. And for a soul like yours, crafted to lead in the final days, there will always be a disconnect between your spirit and their expectations. Even when you simplify your depth, soften your message, try to dilute your essence into a language they can digest, it still doesn't land. And you've felt that heartbreak, haven't you? The moment when even the people who once cheered for you begin to go silent. The quiet exits, the subtle eye rolls, the tension you can feel in the room when you speak from a place of vision and not convention. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're set apart. This is why friendships that once felt secure have dissolved without warning. Why family members question your path, your choices, your very identity. Why the same people who once said, "We believe in you," now grow cold as your light begins to rise. But what if all of this isn't about rejection at all? What if it's divine redirection? What if God is pruning your life, not because you're failing, but because you're ascending? John 15:2 says, "Every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful." You've been pruned, and pruning hurts, especially when it comes in the form of people you love turning their backs. But heaven knows what kind of soil your future requires. And some relationships can't come with you into the next dimension of your destiny. Take Joseph, for example, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery by the same people who shared his blood. Why? Because he dared to dream differently, because he saw visions they couldn't interpret. He wasn't arrogant, he was anointed. And that anointing offended those who were more comfortable in limitation. But what they meant for evil, God used for good. Genesis 50:20 declares it, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." The misunderstanding of Joseph wasn't a mistake, it was a mandate. The same goes for you. Let's talk about another example. Frida Kahlo, a visionary artist whose pain became her palette, whose bold expression of identity, feminism, and physical suffering confused many in her time. She didn't create for applause. She created from the ache of her soul, misunderstood by critics, marginalized for her uniqueness, and doubted by her peers, yet her legacy now spans generations. That's what happens when chosen ones stay faithful to what God placed inside them. Your uniqueness might not make sense to the world right now, but legacy never starts with applause. It starts with alignment. So let me ask you this. How many times have you been tempted to minimize yourself just to stay palatable to others? How often have you shrunk your vision so they wouldn't feel threatened? How many moments have you second-guessed your own calling because the people around you lacked the faith to believe in it? Stop doing that. That shrinking serves no one, especially not the kingdom of God. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to awaken the world. And that awakening comes at a cost. The cost is misunderstanding. The cost is isolation. But the reward is clarity, favor, and supernatural release. Jesus himself was misunderstood at every turn. The people he came to save called him a blasphemer. His own disciples often struggled to grasp his true mission, and yet he kept going. He didn't explain himself to satisfy their confusion. He knew his Father had already confirmed who he was. That same confirmation is resting on you. You don't need their validation when heaven has already stamped your soul with divine approval. There's power in that kind of knowing, but with that power comes separation. And separation isn't cruelty, it's consecration. When God begins to pull people from your life, don't see it as loss, see it as alignment. It means your frequency is changing. It means your spirit is ascending. And the higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. The crowd gets smaller, but the clarity grows sharper. And in that silence, God begins to reveal who's truly for you. Psalm 118:22 says, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." The very rejection you've endured is evidence of your cornerstone status. You are foundational in the coming move of God. Let's not forget the story of Galileo Galilei, a scientist excommunicated and ridiculed by the church and society for insisting that the earth revolved around the sun. His observations were deemed heretical in his time. But history now regards him as a pioneer of truth. He wasn't wrong, he was simply ahead. Could that be your story too? Could it be that you're simply ahead of your time, tuned into a realm most people aren't ready for yet? That your spirit carries a language only heaven can decode. And that's why they walk away. That's why they fall silent when your light gets too bright. That's why your elevation triggers their insecurity. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because your growth confronts their stagnancy. And here's the mystery. If they had accepted you, you might have settled. You might have camped in comfort. But leaders, especially end-time leaders like you, can't afford comfort. They require clarity, and clarity often demands solitude. Have you noticed how the more obedient you become to God, the fewer people understand you? That's not failure, that's filtration. God is filtering your surroundings so your focus can sharpen. You're not being abandoned, you're being advanced. And when the time comes, when heaven unveils what it's been secretly cultivating inside you, the same people who left will witness it and wonder. Don't let bitterness grow in the soil of your calling. Let obedience bloom instead. Let's look at the story of Maya Angelou, a woman who, after enduring trauma, chose silence for years. She was misunderstood in her youth, misjudged for her choices, and overlooked in rooms where she deserved honor. But when she finally found her voice, the world was forced to listen. Her words didn't just inspire, they healed. Her pain became prophecy, just like yours will. So, chosen one, is it possible that every time someone misunderstood you, it was because their spiritual radar wasn't calibrated to the frequency of your calling? Could it be that your divine purpose was simply invisible to those still thinking on a human level? 1 Corinthians 2:14 says, "The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolishness." That's why they don't understand. That's why they resist. Because spiritual assignments look like foolishness to the unawakened. But don't stop, don't shrink, don't go quiet. Your voice is part of heaven's rescue plan. And when God pulls back the curtain and reveals what He's been building inside of you, it will all make sense. Not just to them, but to you too. Every number, every exit, every strange look, every silence, all of it was necessary. All of it was sacred. Now, as you cross this threshold, because that's what this season is, it's not the end, but the gateway. What's coming next is more than separation. It's activation. Your spiritual gifts will sharpen. Your discernment will deepen. Your boldness will rise. And those who couldn't see you before will either awaken or move aside. Because your next level is not about being seen, it's about being sent. Stay right where you are. The next sign will uncover a truth so hidden, even you may have missed it. And when it's revealed, you'll understand why the warfare increased when your obedience intensified. You're getting close, very close. Keep walking. Heaven's about to break through. Chosen one, there have always been moments, sacred, strange, and silent, where something deep inside you just knew, before anyone said a word, before any headline broke, before the storm formed in the distance. There was a subtle whisper in your spirit, a pressure in your chest, an image that arrived in your dreams like a messenger from heaven. You couldn't explain it, but it felt real. And it wasn't imagination. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a random emotional shift. It was revelation. It was discernment. And that inner signal, that supernatural antenna, has been trying to tell you something for years. You were never ordinary. You were born with prophetic sight. Think about all the times you sensed something shifting before the facts caught up. You felt danger before it showed its face. You've had dreams of people or places only to walk into them days, even weeks later. You've woken up heavy, your spirit carrying a burden you couldn't name, only to later learn that something dramatic had just shifted in your environment, your family, or even your nation. Have you ever paused to ask, why me? Why do I feel these things no one else seems to notice? Why does truth whisper to me in silence before it screams to the masses? Let's get clear. What you carry is not a coincidence. It's not superstition. It's not even just heightened awareness. It is prophetic sensitivity, holy insight given to those God can trust in the final days. And while others may call it crazy, overly emotional, or too deep, heaven calls it strategic, necessary, anointed. Amos 3:7 says, "Surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets." You're not being overwhelmed, you're being entrusted. God shows you what he hides from others, not because you're better, but because you're called to go before them. Do you remember Joan of Arc? A teenage girl, dismissed by scholars and feared by politicians, claimed she heard divine messages that told her to lead France to victory. Her visions defied reason. Her obedience cost her everything. But her spiritual insight altered the course of history. She didn't lead with worldly credentials. She led because of what she heard, what she saw, and what she believed. That is the weight of the prophetic gift. To move in obedience, even when logic disagrees, even when the crowd laughs, even when the risk feels unbearable. Chosen one, the world may have labeled you too much, too sensitive, too quiet, too distant, but those labels were the world's way of avoiding the truth that you see too clearly, that your spirit picks up on frequencies others aren't tuned into. And yes, it can feel lonely. Prophetic sensitivity is often paired with isolation, because when you're carrying heaven's secrets, you can't be surrounded by noise. The deeper your discernment, the quieter your circle becomes. Because God doesn't shout his mysteries from mountaintops, he whispers them into the souls of those who are still enough to listen. Have you ever walked away from something that looked perfect on paper, a job, a relationship, a business deal, and later discovered that what seemed right was poisoned at the root? That wasn't fear. That wasn't overthinking. That was your spiritual radar firing at full alert. You heard something others didn't. You felt a shift others couldn't name, and it saved you. Again and again. Proverbs 3:6 promises, "In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." What they call luck, was divine direction. What they call coincidence, was confirmation. Look at someone like Nikola Tesla. A scientist and inventor often misunderstood, even mocked during his lifetime. He spoke of energy, frequencies, and ideas far beyond his time. Many couldn't grasp his language because it wasn't meant for the present. It was meant for the future. He wasn't just building machines. He was tapping into unseen systems. And so are you. You're not just observing life. You're reading spiritual patterns. You're catching glimpses of movements before they begin. And it's time to stop hiding that gift. The enemy's strategy has always been the same: to make God's prophets doubt their sight, to convince them that their discernment is delusion, to isolate them not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Why? Because if you start to believe the lie that your insight is madness, you'll stop speaking. You'll go silent, and the moment the prophet goes silent, the people lose direction. But here's the truth. Your insight is the map someone else needs to survive. You're not imagining things. You're intercepting them. You're not making up stories. You're receiving strategy. Isaiah 30:21 says, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" That's what's been happening inside of you. That voice is not your fear. It's your Father. And when He speaks, even in whispers, you know, you move, you adjust, and while others mock or delay, you prepare. While they build castles on sand, you're laying bricks for an ark. Because the storm they can't see yet, you've already felt it coming. Let's talk about Elijah. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah is hiding in a cave, afraid, tired, misunderstood. He's done miraculous things, called down fire from heaven, outrun chariots. And yet, he feels alone. But it's in that quiet cave that God meets him, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a gentle whisper. That's how God speaks to His chosen ones. Not always with loud signs, but in the stillness, in dreams, in feelings, in subtle nudges. And He's been speaking to you like that for a long time. But here's what many miss. This gift you carry, it's not just for you, it's for others too. You're not just called to see, you're called to lead, to speak what others don't yet understand, to warn even when they mock, to build even when they doubt. The same people who laugh at your spiritual sensitivity will one day find safety in what you've built. Because this gift isn't emotional, it's architectural. You're designing safe places for souls to run to when the world starts to burn. Now, I know you've wrestled with the weight. You've probably asked, "God, why me? Why do I feel so much? Why do I dream so vividly? Why do I wake up in tears when nothing's happened yet?" Because you were made for the front line. And leaders in the final days cannot be spiritually deaf. They need to see ahead, speak ahead, move ahead. That's why your ears hear differently. That's why your heart beats faster around certain people. That's why you can walk into a room and know something's off without anyone saying a word. Your soul is alert, even when your mind doesn't understand. And yes, it's costly. People will mock what they don't understand. They'll roll their eyes at your warnings until the storm hits. But by then, you'll already be 2 steps ahead. And that's the role of the prophetic voice. Not to entertain, but to prepare. You're not called to impress. You're called to instruct. You're not here to be loud. You're here to be clear. And clarity is what the world is starving for. Think of Corrie ten Boom. During World War II, she and her family hid Jews from the Nazis. She didn't have political power or prophetic title, but she had spiritual sensitivity. She sensed what others missed. She moved in obedience. She became a shelter in the chaos. Your calling is similar. You may not have a stage or a spotlight, but your intuition is building a refuge, one that people will run to when the illusions of this world collapse. So here's the question you must answer now. Are you willing to carry this gift even when it costs you, even when it isolates you, even when no one thanks you? Because the final days will not be led by the popular. They'll be led by the prepared, by the ones who listened when others laughed, by the ones who wept for a world that wasn't weeping yet, by the ones who woke up heavy and prayed anyway. John 16:13 gives us this promise. But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all the truth, and He will tell you what is yet to come. That's what's been happening inside you. The Spirit of truth has been guiding, prompting, and showing you things ahead of time, not to scare you, but to prepare you. So don't ignore the whispers. Don't silence the dreams. Don't downplay the warnings. What you carry is not an inconvenience. It's a compass, and the world desperately needs the direction you provide. And now, chosen one, take a breath, because the final sign is coming. And this one won't just confirm your identity, it will unlock your authority. You were not born to merely observe. You were born to command. Get ready. Heaven is about to speak through you. Chosen one, let's tell the truth. You've tried to walk away from this more times than you're willing to admit. You've tried to numb the ache in your spirit, hush the voice calling you higher, and convince yourself that maybe, just maybe, a normal life would be enough. A life where you could go unnoticed, clock in and clock out, pay your bills, make weekend plans, smile when expected, and survive the routine. You've worn the mask well. You've played your part in the world's script. But deep within your soul, there's been a persistent sound, like the quiet hum of a divine frequency that refuses to be silenced. No matter how deep you try to bury it beneath distractions, achievements, or even heartbreak, it always finds its way back. And not just quietly, louder, stronger, more urgent. Why is that? Why won't the calling leave you alone? Why does the idea of purpose keep returning when you've done everything to silence it? Because the voice inside you is not your imagination. It's your assignment. And the restlessness you feel is not a flaw. It's the echo of eternity calling you to rise. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That's why the ordinary life never fit you. That's why normal felt suffocating. That's why, even when you tried to disappear, the heavens still kept tabs on you. Because you were not made to blend in. You were born to lead, to build, to awaken. And the call on your life isn't based on your readiness. It's rooted in God's timing. How many times have you convinced yourself to step back because the burden felt too heavy? How many times did you say, "I'm not ready," when in truth you were just tired? Tired of the weight, the misunderstanding, the spiritual warfare that seems to surround your every step. You may have walked away from your purpose before, not out of rebellion, but out of heartbreak, out of confusion, out of a desperate need for peace. You told yourself you weren't abandoning your calling. You were just trying to breathe. And for a season, it worked. You faded into the background. You tried to build a life that made sense. You told yourself that ambition was pride, that leadership could wait, that someone else would answer the call. But peace never came, not the real kind, because peace doesn't come from hiding. It comes from surrender. You weren't created for the sidelines. That's why it hurts so much to stay there. You've always felt a tension between who the world sees and who you truly are. That tension isn't confusion, it's alignment. It's heaven pulling you back into position, and every time you try to ignore it, it finds a way to speak. Through a dream you can't shake, a word that pierces your chest, or a fire that rises out of nowhere when someone mentions a vision that mirrors your own. That's your spirit remembering what your soul was sent here to do. And no matter how hard you try to forget, destiny refuses to forget you. Look at Moses, a man who ran from his calling, hiding in the wilderness after failure and fear drove him away. He didn't feel qualified. He didn't feel articulate. He didn't want the spotlight. But when the burning bush called his name, it reignited the truth that had always been buried inside him. Exodus 3:12 reminds us of what God said to him, "I will be with you." That was enough. Not credentials, not confidence, presence. And that same presence is now stirring in you. Or consider Rosa Parks. She wasn't a political leader or a trained activist at the time she refused to give up her seat. She was simply tired. Tired of injustice, tired of compromise, tired of silence. And in one moment of quiet courage, she stepped into history. She didn't plan it. She didn't strategize it. She simply surrendered to a holy discontent. That's how divine timing works. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It waits for your obedience. Chosen one, hear this clearly. God isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for permission. He doesn't need the polished. He needs the surrendered. And if you're still breathing, still watching, still wondering if this message is for you, then this is your confirmation. You're not crazy. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. You've been in training. Every delay, every disappointment, every heartbreak has been preparing you for the very hour we're stepping into. Philippians 1:6 says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." That work in you is still alive, still growing, still destined to bloom. You've been drafted by the kingdom, and not for just any battle, for the final hour, for a season of history where clarity is rare and compromise is everywhere. And in times like these, God doesn't send the crowd. He sends the consecrated, those who've been forged in fire, those who've wrestled with their identity in silence, those who know what it feels like to want to give up, but rise anyway. You are one of those. You've been set apart, and you've been hidden until now. Look at Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian and pastor who opposed Hitler's regime. He was imprisoned and eventually executed for his convictions. But long before the world recognized him as a hero, he was already walking in obedience. He didn't feel qualified, he didn't seek attention, but he knew the cost of silence. And his quiet defiance became a testimony for generations. That same spirit, the one that obeys even when it hurts, is alive in you. So why are you still doubting your readiness? Why are you still waiting for someone else to give you permission to rise? The time is no longer coming. It's already here. God is saying now. The season of hiding is over. The hour of activation has arrived. And it doesn't matter how many times you've tried to run. What matters is that you're still here, still willing, still able to respond. And if you think you don't have what it takes, remember this. Gideon hid in the winepress. Esther was an orphan. Peter was a fisherman. None of them looked the part, but all of them were chosen. Because God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And you, chosen one, have been called. So let's settle this right now. No more running. No more apologizing for your fire. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. What comes next will require your voice, your scars, your testimony, your obedience. This next chapter isn't about safety, it's about legacy. And your legacy begins not when you feel ready, but when you finally say yes. Matthew 22:14 reminds us, "Many are called, but few are chosen." You didn't just hear the call, you were marked by it. That's why you've survived what should have taken you out. That's why you've been uncomfortable in places others settle in. That's why your soul keeps waking up with a divine urgency, even when your body is tired. Because the mantle is still on you, and it's getting heavier, not to crush you, but to confirm that the weight you feel is your spiritual armor being fitted for battle. Now pause, chosen one, breathe, because everything you've walked through is about to converge. Every lesson, every rejection, every detour, they're all pieces of a divine puzzle. And in the conclusion that's coming next, the final words will do more than make sense of your journey. They will awaken something holy, something ancient, something fierce. The part of you that's been sleeping will rise. And when it does, you'll never walk the same again. Stay with me, because your yes is about to collide with heaven's now. And that collision will shake everything. Chosen one, if what you've heard up until now stirred something ancient inside you, if your spirit whispered, "This is me," even as your heart raced and your eyes welled with tears, then know without a shadow of a doubt, this isn't a coincidence. This is a divine appointment. You were not chosen by accident. You were not set apart by random favor. You were selected, handpicked, and marked by heaven before you ever breathed your first breath. Long before the chaos began, before the heartbreak shattered your world, before the silence made you question your sanity, you were already written into the strategy of the final hour. What you carry was decided in eternity. You were crafted to be light in a world descending into shadow. You were designed to walk boldly in places others run from. You were meant to speak truth in a time when lies rule the airwaves, and silence is often mistaken for peace. But peace without truth is not peace, it's surrender. And you, beloved, were never made to surrender to darkness. You were made to disrupt it. Let me ask you something. Can you still pretend to be ordinary when your soul has already tasted revelation? Can you still hide behind normal when everything inside you is rising, burning, awakening with divine fire? You weren't sent to this generation to play it safe. These are not gentle days. These are not the times for hesitation. This is a moment in history where heaven and hell are watching, and the world doesn't need more polished appearances. It needs power. It needs real ones. Voices like yours, raw, unshaken, pure, burning with the Spirit, who refuse to bow to fear or blend into the background noise. Romans 8:19 declares, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." You are one of those the earth has been groaning for, and now heaven is revealing you. The weight you've been carrying in secret isn't a burden. It's evidence. Evidence that God has entrusted you with something eternal. That crown pressing on your spirit, that pressure that won't let you rest. It's not imagination. It's inheritance. And the reason it's felt heavier lately is because the time is drawing near. Your mantle is no longer being shaped. It's being summoned. Let's look at Nelson Mandela again. He spent 27 years in prison, not as a punishment for failure, but as a forge for future power. During those years, the world forgot him, but heaven remembered. And when the time came, his release wasn't just a personal liberation. It was a generational shift. Just like you, he was hidden, refined, and then revealed. And when he stood in that moment of history, he was ready. You're walking the same path. The silence you've endured hasn't been abandonment. It's been a sacred hiding. But not forever. Because when God says now, no gate in hell can keep you buried. The world has tried to make you see yourself through the lens of your flaws, your delays, your detours. But now, God is asking you to look again. Look deeper. See what he sees. You are not your trauma. You are not your missed opportunities. You are not the rejection, the failure, or the silence. You are fire. You are a storm wrapped in peace. You are the answered prayer of generations who never got to see the fulfillment but believed it anyway. You are living prophecy. And what is prophecy, if not the collision of divine intent with human obedience? Let me tell you about Malala Yousafzai, a teenage girl shot for daring to speak up for her right to education. The world tried to silence her. The enemy tried to eliminate her voice before it could mature. But not only did she survive, she rose. She became a global leader before the age of 20. Her pain wasn't punishment. It was positioning. She carried weight far beyond her years because her assignment required it. Just like you. Chosen one, this is your moment. Not in the distant future. Not when all your doubts disappear. Not when others finally recognize your worth. Now, your destiny doesn't begin when you're perfect. It begins when you're willing. You've already been tried, already been refined, already been tested in fire. And each flame only proved what hell already feared. You can't be broken. You were born to burn, not with destruction, but with divine purpose. Isaiah 60 verse 1 speaks directly to this moment. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Do you feel it? That's not inspiration. That's activation. That's heaven saying enough waiting, enough hiding, enough doubting. You were made to stand like a lion in a land full of echoes, to echo truth, not fear, to carry a voice that doesn't just comfort, but commands. The time for blending in is over. You were made to shift rooms, to shake foundations, to remind the world what heaven sounds like. Think about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Even he wrestled with the weight of calling. If it be possible, let this cup pass from me. But he didn't stop there. He ended with surrender. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. That's what heaven is waiting on from you. Not a resume, not a flawless plan, just a yes, a real yes. The kind that moves heaven, the kind that shakes hell. So stand up, not with fear, but with fire. Look at yourself in the mirror, not through the lens of your wounds, but through the eyes of God. The pain you've walked through wasn't random, it was training. The delays you faced weren't denial, they were divine timing. You weren't being overlooked, you were being fortified. And now, your silence is about to turn into a sound the earth can't ignore. Let's not forget Harriet Tubman. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't need a crowd. She followed the voice of God through forests, across borders, into the night. Each time she returned to free others, she was walking in the fire of divine courage. She wasn't educated in man's institutions, but she had spiritual sight, and that was enough. So is yours. You are not late, you are not disqualified, you are right on time. And this time, you won't walk away from your calling. This time, you won't shrink to fit the expectations of those who couldn't see your worth. This time, you'll rise. Because this isn't inspiration, it's a spiritual alarm, and it's been ringing for a long time. But now, you hear it clearly. No more delay. John 14:12 gives you this authority. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. That's the legacy you're stepping into. Not survival, not silence. Greater things. But greater things require greater surrender, and greater surrender leads to greater glory. So hear this loud and clear. Heaven is not waiting on the perfect version of you. It's waiting on the present you, the one who knows they're not ready, but says yes anyway. The one who feels the weight, but refuses to quit. The one who hears the call and finally stops running. That's the one God uses. This is not a drill. This is destiny. This is the unveiling of who you've always been underneath the pain, the doubt, and the fear. This is your fire returning. This is your identity breaking free from the chains of smallness. This is the sound of your name echoing in the halls of heaven as God whispers, now. Rise from fear. Rise from delay. Rise from everything that tried to tell you that you weren't enough. You were never created to blend in. You were made to ignite, to lead, to speak, to transform. My beloved souls, if you made it this far, it's not by accident. It means your spirit recognizes truth when it hears it. It means the fire inside you is real, and it's ready. So if this message stirred something deep within, if you feel the confirmation echoing in your bones, then type boldly in the comments, I was born for this. Let the world see your declaration. Let the darkness hear your courage. Let heaven record your yes. Because when chosen ones begin to rise, the earth shifts. Chains break, atmospheres transform, and destinies unlock. I want to take a sacred moment to thank each of you for walking this journey with me, especially those who have supported this work through Super Thanks. Whether you've given or not, please know this. Your presence is a blessing. Your energy, your engagement, your hunger for truth, it matters more than you know. I see you, I honor you, and I am beyond grateful to be walking alongside you in this final hour. If you feel led to support this message and help it reach more chosen ones across the world, you can give through Super Thanks right here on this video. Every seed sown helps amplify this calling and extend its reach into places it's most needed. But please know, your heart is enough, your time is enough, your yes is enough. Whether you donate or not, Your journey here is deeply appreciated, and you are valued more than words can express. Now, as we part for today, I speak blessings over you. May God awaken every gift that's been buried, breathe fresh fire into your spirit, and open doors no man can shut. May you walk boldly in your calling, undistracted by fear, unmoved by delay, and unshaken by doubt. I pray your next step be guided by divine clarity, your heart guarded by heaven's peace, and your voice used as a weapon of light in this hour of rising darkness. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You were born for this. Until next time, stay on fire, stay surrendered, and never, ever forget who you are. God bless you, chosen one. The best has only just begun.